when you're looking at a course and you're looking at the entry requirements, what are the grades that you have to get? What subjects do you need? And that includes A-level and GCSE subjects. So all of those things need to be considered. And where do you find that information? On Course Finder. So I think I've mentioned Course Finder like 4 times now already, but if you're listening to this and you want to know all the stuff that the girls are talking about here, Queen's Course Finder page is where you need to go. How did you get through that period of applying to all these unis and doing your research?
I actually really like research, so I'm nosy. I'm a nosy person, so
Hello everybody and welcome to Queen's University Belfast Life at the Lanyon podcast. For those that don't know, the Lanyon building sits at the heart of Queen's campus and it's one of the most beautiful, well-known buildings around Belfast. This podcast is going to give you a real insight into what it's like to be a Queen's student, and you'll get information about making those all-important informed decisions when it comes to deciding whether or not to study with us here at Queen's. My name is Raymond Miller and I'm the Undergraduate Recruitment Officer here at Queen's, and today's podcast is entitled Applying to Uni from Deadlines to Decisions. I think that sounds pretty good, I'm not going to lie. I'm pretty proud of that title. But we've got 2 guests today who are experts in applying to uni because they've both done it. One of them is currently doing that and one of them has gone through the process. So guys, if you want to introduce yourself to our listeners.
hi, my name's Georgia Hussey. I'm currently a student at Victoria College and I've applied to study psychology at Queen's.
My name's Inez and I'm a second year medical student at Queen's.
Perfect. You're both very welcome. Nice to have you here in our podcast studio. The girls were quite impressed when they walked in here, so that's nice. But behind the scenes, it's maybe not as impressive as what you're seeing on camera. And also, Georgia, you've done a wee bit of work on BBC radio, isn't that right? You had the opportunity to do that?
Yeah, I was on BBC Radio Ulsters on your behalf with Linda Macaulay.
Very good. So you're probably the most got the most experience here on doing things like this. So
A lot of pressure.
no pressure at all. So we're here today to talk a wee bit about, as I said, applying for UCAS and applying for uni through UCAS, and that's the first place we want to start. How do you actually apply to study at a university? And the main place is UCAS, isn't that right? Do you guys know what it even stands for? Maybe that's something you don't know.
I don't.
No? That's funny because, some people do, some people don't. It actually stands for University and Colleges Admission Service. So there you go, makes sense. So that is how you apply to university. Everybody in the UK will apply through UCAS. That gives everybody kind of a fair standing in terms of the applications, and it's an online application. Within the application, there are about 8 different sections that you have to complete. So it's things like your personal details, which I imagine was quite easy for you guys to fill in. It was just your name, address, phone number, those sorts of things. There was a wee bit of information about how you're going to fund university. There was information about your education, and I think you put in a few extra things in terms of that. So you put in education and also other certificates and stuff that you had. Is that right, Inez?
Yeah, so like different music grades I had and I also had done like first aid and things like that.
There's also a section about employment. So if you've got an employment history, you can mention that on the UCAS form. There's a referee that your teachers will do, or your guidance counsellors. And then there's 2 sort of sections within the application I want to kind of focus on. Firstly, your choices. So this is the actual courses that you are thinking of applying to. And what was it that you actually applied to, Georgia?
I applied to psychology in 2 different universities in Northern Ireland, including Queen's, but Queen's was my firm choice because its grade boundaries were higher, but also it was offering me a Bachelor's of Science, whereas the other one was offering Bachelor of Arts.
And it's good to kind of consider those, the types of qualification that you're getting whenever you're looking at choices. And psychology, was that a choice you made based on your love for the subject, or did you have a career path in mind? What were you kind of thinking when you made that choice?
No, so from I was about 9, I've had a real passion for the education of people with disabilities, but specifically sensory disabilities. So when I'm older, I really want to be a qualified teacher of visual impairment, and I know that to get into that job, you either need to go down a teaching route or do psychology, then educational psychology, and teaching just doesn't seem like it's for me, so I went down psychology instead.
Amazing. It's really good that you've made that decision to look at the career first and work back from there. And I imagine you did the same, Inez, because you've done quite a vocational career path. What were your kind of choices in terms of your UCAS application?
So I looked at like different courses and things like that. I actually also applied for economics in the south because I was really interested in that. But medicine for me has always been what I wanted to do. So I looked at what different universities offered. I'm interested in doing a master's in the middle of my degree, and that's what made Queen's different, was that it offered that option that other universities don't.
And so it was you. And in terms of your choices, I should probably mention that whenever you're applying for UCAS and you have those course choices, you can make up to 5 choices. But
Mhm.
for medicine, it's slightly different. You can only make 4 to medicine-based subjects. Isn't that right?
For medicine, you can make up to 4 medicine-based choices and then one somewhere else.
And in terms of your 4 choices that you made, one of them would have been at Queen's, obviously, and were the 3 other medicine choices at obviously unis in England or Scotland or further afield?
Queen's was my main one, but I also had to apply to ones across the UK as well.
Brilliant. Um, for yourself then, Georgia, you said you only made 2 choices, but as I say, how those choices are made up can be from it can be from 5 different unis. So you could apply for psychology at 5 different universities, or you could apply for 5 different courses at the same university. It really is whenever our listeners are thinking about applying, it is a case that you can mix and match with those choices across universities and across courses. So it's important to have a range of different things if you're not sure what it is that you want to study. The final section then of the application process in general is called your personal statement, and we'll talk a wee bit about that in later on in the podcast here. But effectively, the personal statement is your way of detailing all the skills and achievements that you have, and it's a really great way to kind of showcase yourself to the university. But will suspense will be killing our listeners, but we will talk about the personal statement in a wee bit more detail later on. Now, once you apply through UCAS to go to university, you fill out all those different sections that we've just talked about, but there must be deadlines to those. It can't just kind of rumble on all year. So, what was the deadline when you applied in September of your year 14 year, Georgia? What was the deadline for you to get your application in?
It was the middle to end of January, I'm nearly sure, but we were all told to get our personal statements in sooner so that we had time to go over them and fix them and change them so we could just send everything away at once.
All the careers teachers out there listen to this, that will be music to their ears, because while January is the official deadline, it's really important to get it in as soon as possible. Like you say, to check over your application, to check your personal statement. It gives the teachers a bit of time to do the references, which they do for each person. So while there is a deadline for January for the vast majority of courses, if you can get it in a bit sooner, that's really important as well. And for medicine, and also for dentistry and veterinary science, and if you're applying to Oxford and Cambridge, the application is slightly earlier. What was it for you?
So it was the 15th of October for me, technically, but like Georgia said, it was definitely a lot earlier.
Yeah. And again, you probably were told in lower sixth in year 13, you need to start
Yeah.
thinking about this, because as soon as September hits, like whenever you start upper sixth in year 14 in September, it must be quite daunting thinking, "Oh, by next month I need to get this application in." Did you find that? Were you able to cope with it okay?
Well, I was kind of starting to do it over the summer because I also had an exam to revise for to apply to medicine, so I was kind of already in that mindset. But definitely by the time September hit, it was starting to get quite serious.
Definitely, and that is the case for most people. And I'm glad you mentioned for medicine specifically, and also for dentistry, and for those 2 courses specifically. There's a test that you have to do in the summer between year
Yeah.
13 and year 14, and that makes up part of your application as well. For courses like psychology and other courses, that's not the case. But again, we'll touch on that a wee bit later on. But it's important that you mentioned that, Inez. So the deadlines are there. You get your application, you hit the deadline. Whenever you're kind of deciding on the courses that you want to study, what are the things you're doing? How are you actually going about and researching these courses? What are you looking for out there to find out about the course? What did you do, Georgia, when you were thinking about applying for psychology?
So I looked on UCAS for the different universities that offered the course I wanted to do.
And that's a really, sorry to interrupt, but that's a really good starting point. If you're not sure what you want to do and you've all this choice, go on to UCAS website. They have resources there to help you. So that's what you did. You went straight to UCAS.
It can be daunting, there's so many choices, but I just narrowed it down by putting in the search bar psychology because I knew that's what I wanted. And after I found the universities that done psychology that were where I would be willing to go should I get the offer, I went on to their website specifically and I looked at their the modules that current year were doing, and I looked at to see what all their topics were to see if I'd be interested in their topics, and that was a big contributor of why I put Queen's first was because their modules just seemed more interesting to me.
And I think, honestly, I think that's such a smart way of doing it, because a lot of people will just, oh, I'm kind of good at maths and skills, so I'll just do maths. And they don't really do the research and look and see what's involved in the course. So you've gone on to the course finder page on our website, which, if you're looking to know about Queen's courses, is where you would go to. So you go to the course finder page, and it details all the different modules that you'd be able to study on the course. So I think that's a really, really good starting point in terms of doing your research. Were you similar, Inez? Did you kind of go to the course finder page and look around that?
Yeah, I was pretty similar. So I went onto the different pages of the universities and I looked at how they taught the course, because I suppose with certain courses it doesn't really depend on the modules. Like medicine, you kind of have to do
Yeah,
everything.
yeah.
So it's more so like how it's taught. But I found it really useful to look at like YouTube videos and podcasts like this as to how students found it, how the university approached it, and also it's fun to also do like little virtual tours of the cities themselves when you're not familiar. Like even Belfast, I didn't really know it that well.
I know that's, again, really, really important thing to do. Um, you mentioned there, well, one part of that is you would have had to go to, again, the course finder page to
Hmm.
find out information. Modules is one thing on there, but also entry requirements is
Yeah.
probably a big thing that you're looking for. You'll know kind of how you're getting on in your exams through the years. So was the entry requirements a big factor in deciding what course you wanted to study as well?
Not well. I thought that it would have been a bigger deal than it was. But I had already applied to Queen's at the start of this year, so I already had my AS grades to go off, and
Okay.
that's 40% already. So I got three A's, so they weren't really that much of a worry for me. But I know that if I put Queen's first and it's got higher grade boundaries, then I can just fall back on the other one, and then I'm at least
Of course.
gonna get one of the two.
Totally. And it's, I mean, for you, because you did so well academically, well done on your S's.
Thank you.
It wasn't as big of a consideration. Other people, it will be a big factor. You'll want to go and look at those entry requirements, and I know they're really high for medicine as well. Or an S, sorry,
I suppose you did like have to look at them, but for medicine they're kind of the same
across the
everywhere.
board.
Like
Yeah,
it's kind of like the same. But it was also, I know other people who maybe went through the pathway program and were offered lower grades, which was a really good offer and way to go in as well.
definitely. And there are opportunities like that. That's kind of, it's not quite a scholarship, but it's a program
Hmm.
that we offer to students from widening participation backgrounds. So if you've maybe been in care, or you're a carer, or you're from an area of deprivation, there's a whole list of criteria that would mean you come from a widening participation background. And if you meet that criteria, you may be eligible through the pathway program to get that grade
Hmm.
drop. So definitely, when you're doing your research, when you're looking online, and when you're looking at those entry requirements, it's important to consider all those things. What the entry requirements are there any support available? And another big thing would be subject requirements. So for some courses, you would have to study particular subjects at A level, or alternative qualifications as well, in order to be eligible for those courses. So actually, I know for psychology, you needed to achieve at least a B in maths at GCSE. So that would have been one consideration you would have had, Georgia. Did you look at that when you were applying?
Yeah, I checked all the GCSE um requirements and then all the A level ones as well. There wasn't really specific ones for A level, but I had got my B's in maths and English, so that wasn't really a concern of mine. But at the time, had I have known that during my GCSEs, I probably would have worked harder in maths and English.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've been working really hard. You've done really well. But no, it's important to consider those things when you're looking at a course and you're looking at the entry requirements. What are the grades that you have to get? What subjects do you need? And that includes A level and GCSE subjects. So all of those things need to be considered. And where do you find that information? On Course Finder. So I think I've mentioned Course Finder like 4 times now already. But if you're listening to this and you want to know all the stuff that the girls are talking about here, Queen's Course Finder page is where you need to go. Um, what do you think was the biggest factor in making you decide to come and study, or to at least put in an application for Queen's? What was like the biggest thing for you guys? And as I'll let you answer this one first, what was your thoughts around that?
Again, it was the teaching style is what I really liked about Queen's. So with my course, we do like case-based learning. So it's really interesting to not just learn from your tutors, but also from your peers, and to get that kind of like early opportunity to like teach and present. And I also really like there's like early clinical contact. So for example, from first year, we've been going out to GP practices. And even this year, some people have been in the hospital, and really seeing that early on and knowing that your learning is going somewhere and contributing to that further knowledge. And there was also specific things about Queen's. So I think I mentioned before, I really wanted to do a master's in Queen's. It was one of the only unis that would let you have that opportunity to do it, and to do it in kind of whatever you want. You can even go away for it. And also there's like anatomical teaching, which is only in 3 other universities in the rest of the UK, I think. So that was a big plus as well. I was really interested in that, and having just finished 2 years of it, it's been brilliant.
Excellent. And I think what's coming across there is you've really done your research into the course
Hmm.
and you're able to go, well, I want to study it because of everything you just
Hmm.
mentioned. And that's so important. Assessment and how it's
Yeah.
taught is really
Hmm.
important for you there. And again, that's information that you can find on our
Hmm.
course finder page. So you can go into each of the modules of the course and you can find out how it's taught, how many hours it's taught, how many hours you're in big group lectures, how many hours you're in smaller seminars. So all that stuff is available and it builds up a really good picture of what the course is like, and then you can make that informed decision as to whether or not you want to study it. For you, Georgia, then what was it specifically? What was the one thing that made you think, Queen's is the right choice for me?
I'd already made my firm choice at this point, but I'd went to the open day, and it all just felt really friendly. Um, School at the minute feels really friendly, and so did primary school. And I was really worried that once I went to university, it would be too formal.
Yeah.
Like I would feel like I was in this big scary place with big scary people, but that's
Uh,
not how I felt whenever I went to the open day.
that's really, really pleasing to hear because people do have those feelings certainly when they go to open days, and probably whenever you start, you
Hmm.
probably have those
Yeah.
feelings as well, Inez. But it's lovely to hear that you had a really positive experience from our open day. Um, that's great. I suppose my final sort of question around this is at the time of applying to uni, which a lot of people listening to this will be doing right now, it must have felt quite daunting. It must have felt
Hmm.
like there's so much to do here. On reflection, what do you think was the best way of managing your time? How did you get through that period of applying to all these unis and doing your research?
I actually really like research. So
That's good.
I'm nosy. I'm a nosy person. So I was researching everything out. We started looking actually at universities from year 11. So I knew what I wanted to do and I knew what was going to be expected of me. So whenever it came down to it, I don't think it felt as intimidating as it would have if I had have just started whenever I needed to, whereas I started really early. So if I was to give anyone advice, I'd say start looking as soon as possible because then you're going to have your own ideas in your own head. But also in careers classes, conversations with your friends about what they want to do. You kind of think through conversations with other people really, really informally and naturally that, is that something I'm going to feel comfortable with? Am I going to enjoy it? Because being able to enjoy something is going to be a big part of whether you stick at it.
100%. And if you're not sure what you want to do and you're really torn, choose something that you enjoy because, like you say, you will then want to stick at it. And opportunities, if you pick something you enjoy, opportunities will present themselves as you go through uni. So, a really good bit of advice there. What about yourself, Inez? Something similar?
Yeah, I think like you said, like it can be scary if you let it, but I also thought like this is probably one of the times in your life that it's one of the only things, and one of the only times you're going to get to do it. So just enjoy it. Like I really kind of soaked it up. Like I said, I like looked at the university, like what the student life was like, what the city was like. And I remember like looking at all the different forms of accommodation in Queens and kind of imagining what it would be like to live there. So just enjoy it, like really look into it and enjoy the process.
Amazing. Now, Georgia, you mentioned earlier you wanted to get into a career later on in around visual impairment, and you have a visual impairment. And was that something that kind of affected your choices when it come to choosing a university, or were you able to? Did it not really affect your choice? How did you find that experience?
Yeah, affected my choice because I wanted to think logistically of how I was going to find each subject. Like I very nearly applied for geography, but there's a lot of physical work that I thought that my eyes just really struggled with, and I didn't want to be strained and tired knowing that I had other things going on maybe later that day. So I think thinking of the visual fatigue that I would have suffered had I have done a subject so practical, that was a big deciding factor. But also, whenever I was speaking to the university about it, they were very accommodating, saying that they would do what they could to help that I could get all these like practical assistance and things like that. But it just, I think it kind of put me off a wee bit because I didn't want then to finish university and be looking for a career and then in the career not have the same support as I had in university. So I think when it came to my visual impairment, I had to think further into the future about what I was actually going to do with my degree once I was finished.
Again, I think that's such a mature and brilliant way to think about it, because you have this thing that you know this disability that you live with and you deal with it amazingly, but you have to think forward and think, how is this going to affect me in later life? So that was a really, really smart decision. You mentioned there that the university, you had a conversation with them once you applied for the course. When and how did Queen's get in touch with you?
It was actually very quick. It was only about 2 weeks after I applied. The disability supports officer got involved to she asked me to fill out forms about what I might have needed and how much help I thought I would need. And they've also stressed a lot that they would rather give me more and then for me to say I don't need it than have me go without come the start of the year. So that was really reassuring. And it was nice to know that they were fighting in my corner from I've put it down as a choice.
Amazing. And it's good that, obviously our disability services team are amazing. They will do that with applicants. Once you apply, they will get in touch and talk about all the kind of adjustments or allowances they can make for you. Have you had regular contact with them, or was it just that initial meeting, or have you spoken to them since?
Well, yeah, I have my needs assessment coming up over the summer, but during they have also had a disabled students specific open day, so I went to that and I actually learnt a lot during that open day. Um, it is going to be different to secondary school, but not within the supports that they offer, within how they're delivered. So I feel less stressed because speaking to people while I'm in school, they're like, "Oh, university's going to be a lot different. Like you're not going to have a classroom assistant," and now I know that I'm not, but the same support's going to be delivered in a different way, which is what I'm going to want anyway. Come 4 years' time, I'm not going to want someone sitting beside me all the time. I'm not going to want the same particular person in my lectures all the time. So I think having someone in the background is going to be what I want in the long run anyway.
Definitely, and that'll be a transition from school where you have that support to maybe a wee bit less, but still there, and then after you graduate, you'll be able to cope with that because you've had that experience. Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I suppose if anybody out there does have a disability and they're thinking of applying to uni, like Georgia, don't let that put you off, because there is loads of support available to you at Queen's, and we would absolutely welcome applications from students that have a disability.
Yeah, but also remember that you've done it before. You've moved from primary school to secondary school, and look where you are now. You're fine. You're flying. It's gonna be the same whenever you go from secondary school to university. Only you're not gonna be as young, and it's sometimes maybe harder to adjust whenever you're older, but you're gonna get there in the end.
Amazing. Georgia, you're an inspiration. I'm not even taking the mic.
Thanks.
It's amazing. Now on this podcast, we do a wee section called Mythbusters, where on the topic that we're talking about, applying to university, sorry, we kind of dispel some myths. So Inez, one of the myths I have here is that the personal statement is the most important part of the UCAS application. What do you reckon?
I don't think so. I think particularly for Queens, I think Queens is very holistic how they look at it. So they'll look at your grades. Like we said for the pathway programs, they'll look at sometimes other things. I've heard, like you said, carers maybe. But it is important, but it's not the be all and end all.
Yeah, I mean, just sort of to kind of get the information out there. At Queen's, the main way in which we decide whether or not to make an offer will be based on a student's academic profile, and we'll look at precise grades and not tariff points. That's sometimes a
Hmm.
question that comes up as well. So we're looking at precise grades as to whether or not we make an offer. We will read every personal statement that gets submitted through the UCAS application, but we will only consider those personal statements in what's called a borderline situation. So if we have two or three students who have very similar grade profiles, and we only have one offer that we can make, it's at that point we would then look at the personal statements to see who would be best suited. But the personal statement it's a way of selling yourself to the university. You've probably done it most recently, Georgia. How did you find the process? Did you think it was important to do a personal statement? And what sort of things did you kind of include in it?
Yeah, I thought it was important to do a personal statement because things like psychology, I wanted them to understand what the reason was I wanted to do it. A lot of people are applying to psychology. I know that they maybe don't know what they want to do with a degree, whereas I'm doing it because I know what job I want in the future. So through my personal statement, I really wanted to stress the reason I wanted to do it. Um, but also the experience I'd had. Like I volunteer at Bernardo's every second and fourth Saturday of the month. So that's been really interesting watching how the kids grow and learn and develop and things like that. So
Amazing.
I included things like that, but also my interests. I think it's was important that I included my interests as well in the personal statement.
Definitely, because that personal statement, as I say, it's your way of telling the universities the type of student you are. It's your way of telling universities why you're motivated and committed to doing the courses. Some universities will rely very heavily on the personal statement. As I mentioned, at Queen's, we only look at it in a borderline situation. So the fact that you're focusing on your skills, your competencies, the fact that you're focusing and thinking about why you want to study the course you're applying to, it is a really, really important exercise to do because it gives you that wee bit of reflection where you can go, do you know what? I've done all these skills, I've done this volunteering, and actually I would be really well equipped to do a psychology course or a medicine course. So it is a really worthwhile, important exercise, and it makes up part of that application process. Final myth that we're going to bust here: you don't get much support in school when it comes to applying to university. Would you agree or disagree with that one, Inez?
I would definitely disagree with that one. I had a brilliant careers teacher and she gave us so much support and help. She talked us through the process, what to do. If you ever had any questions, you were straight to that classroom. And also she really made sure that we were informed about the process. I think particularly when there's so many things to do, you know, for example, I had to do a test for university and I had to apply early. She was just very supportive throughout the way.
And I would do a lot of work with careers teachers across Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, and for the vast majority, that's the experience I would say students are getting. You've got that careers teacher in school, you've got that guidance counsellor. Go to them and they will ask the questions, answer the questions that you have. They'll come to us specifically and ask questions. There's careers teachers that email me all the time, and I love getting those emails because it means the right information is getting out there to the students that are applying. So if you're worrying about whether or not you're going to be able to organize yourself to get this personal statement done, to get the UCAS application done, know that there is loads of help and support in your school who'll be able to do that. Brilliant. Thank you for that sort of section. We've kind of covered off how you apply. We've covered off what you do and how you do your research whenever you're applying. Once you've applied by your 15th of October deadline or by your end of January deadline, what's the next thing that happens? Well, universities will consider your applications. They will look at all the applications that have been made and they will start to make offers. So these are the university saying to our applicants, yes, we want you to come study with us if you get certain grades. Now, there are other types of offers, unconditional offers, but we'll not go into that. For the vast majority, you're going to get what's called a conditional offer, where you have to get certain grades in order to get a place on the course. So in terms of the offers that you got, Georgia, did you get offers from, you mentioned earlier you had you applied to two unis and you got offers from both, I assume, did you?
Yeah, I got unconditional offers from both universities.
Amazing. Okay. So you actually got an unconditional offer?
Or sorry,
Conditional?
conditional offers.
I was gonna say that's
I wish I got
unbelievable.
unconditional offers.
Yeah, they are quite rare, unconditional offers, to be fair. So the fact you got a conditional one, that's what the vast majority of people do. They get those conditional offers. Was it long from when you applied to when you got that offer? What was kind of the time scale for that?
No, it only took mine about a month and a half to come in, but then I had sent off my application quite early as well. I think I sent mine off in November time rather than the January deadline.
And again, that's important. If you are in a position to get your application off early, that means that we can make the offer, and it means we know our numbers and we can work towards giving more offers to more people if we have room. So the earlier you can do it, the better, and we would always encourage people to do that. It was sort of slightly different for you, Inez. Once you applied, what was the next stage of the application process for you?
So I applied, like I said, in early October or September, more likely, and then I had to wait to hear about interviews. So I got an offer for interview in I think November, and my interview was one of the last weeks in December, so just after my mocks. And then I sat the interview. It was via Zoom, and it was a multiple mini interview, so it was different stations. And then I had to wait for an offer, and I was lucky I got an offer in March, and then I just confirmed it and had to get the grades.
So, thank you for sharing that. I suppose what's important to note to people watching here, for some courses, there is this extra level of selection. So, for medicine, dentistry, nursing, midwifery, pharmacy, I'm checking my notes here so I don't miss any. Medicine, dentistry, nursing, midwifery, social work, and pharmacy, there's an interview after you submit your
Yeah.
application. If you want to study drama at Queen's, you would be invited for an audition. If you want to study music, you'd be invited to do a musical performance. And then finally, if you want to study architecture, There is a portfolio you would have to submit if you're not already studying art at A level. So those are kind of all the extra levels of selection in terms of those courses. If you're studying psychology, geography, English, computer science, whatever any other subjects, you don't have to do that. You didn't experience that, Georgia, because it's not a
No.
course that offers an extra level of selection. But you did as studying medicine, Inez. So in terms of that interview that you described, how did you go about preparing for that? Were you given support, or were you kind of going into it a bit blind?
Yeah, so I was given a lot of support by my school and by my careers teacher. She gave us practice interview questions and things like that to go through. And there's also different books that you can get online and on social media and via the internet for practice questions. So I just practiced with friends and with family.
I'm sure they were loving
Yeah, yeah, I think they're a bit sick of it by
that.
the end of it, but all worth it in the end. And there's also different like webinars and resources like that. And Queen's actually has a society called SWAT Up, which offers interview courses to secondary school students
Right?
to kind of prepare them for
I did
that.
not know
Yeah.
that. So a
hmm
society we have at Queen's,
Yeah.
they run this, and then
hmm
students can sign up for it. Amazing.
Yeah.
Did you find that helpful?
I found it so helpful. It was very helpful, and they also give a day where they kind of went through what medicine was, what a day in a life was like, and different things like that, which was really encouraging and kind of reassuring to kind of know what I was going into.
Uh,
Hopefully.
And did you get any, whether it be lots or little,
Mhm.
did you get any work experience which kind of helped you?
Well, due to the pandemic and things like that, it was limited, but there's still a lot out there. So before lockdown, I was able to get a day's work experience in a GP, and then I also found that there's a lot of online resources. So there's different Royal Colleges in medicine, and for example, the Royal Colleges of GPs ran a work experience. Also, different universities did work experience that were applicable to anywhere you applied to. And there's also a lot of YouTube videos and resources out there about what it was like to be a doctor and to kind of gain experience and insight.
Amazing. So there's loads of resources out there. There's loads
hmm
of help. Go seek it, and you will
Yeah.
find it.
hmm
Um, when you got to the interview, so you actually were
hmm
sitting down to do it. You mentioned it was on Zoom,
Yeah.
and you said MMI, which stands for multiple mini interviews.
Yeah.
Essentially, there's multiple stations that you go to
Yeah.
and do a wee mini interview at each.
hmm
What was that like? Was it
Uh,
difficult? Did you embrace it, or were you nervous? How did you feel about it?
I was quite nervous, but it was nice that it was on Zoom because you were just at home, and once it was finished, you just went back into the
Yeah.
kitchen. But I thought it was really good to have like multiple different stations. So, for example, if one was very nerve-wracking or very tough, you just went into the new one fresh, and you could use like some of the same examples for different ones. But I thought it was good. I really enjoyed it, and there's also different role plays that you could kind of act out. But yeah,
Excellent. Sounds like you did loads of prep, so I'm sure I'm sure it obviously went well for you. You're sitting here now.
yeah.
So I suppose to reiterate that point, after you submit your application, you're waiting on offers for the vast majority
hmm
of courses. For other courses, medicine, dentistry, nursing, midwifery, social work and pharmacy, drama, music, and architecture, there will be an extra thing that you have to do. And in your case, that was an interview.
hmm
So after the interview, then what happened then? You were informed you did well, and you got made an offer. Is that kind of how it worked?
Yeah, you just had to be really
Yeah.
patient, because there's a lot of different rounds of interviews, so different like months. And then I got my offer and I confirmed it, so I was just happy enough with that.
Amazing. And you brought up a important point there. It No news is good news during that period where you're waiting for offers. I
Yeah.
know it can be frustrating when you have to wait, but our admissions team are doing everything they possibly can to get offers out as quickly as they possibly can. But it is just when you are doing
hmm
different rounds of interviews that it is a case that sometimes you just have to wait. So sorry, you just have to hold tight,
Yeah.
but hopefully it'll be worth it for you in the end. So after then you submitted your application, you got your offers, you have to kind of make your firm and insurance choice, which you talked about earlier, Georgia, which is the first choice, the one you really want to go to, and your insurance choice, your backup choice, the one that you would go to if you don't quite meet the grades of your firm. You find that all out on results day. You're about to experience results day. You've gone through it.
Yeah.
How are you feeling? I'm guessing slightly nervous given your reaction there. Are you feeling a wee bit nervous about results day?
Yeah, I'm a wee bit nervous, but I've already done 40%, so and also once I finish my exams, there's nothing I can do about it anyway.
Exactly.
So
Yeah. And yeah, that's totally it. Be as prepared as you can for your exams. Go into that, and then just sit back and enjoy your summer. I guess would be the advice. You've exams coming up. But when people are watching this, it will be the start of September, so it will be the start of a new academic year. But you've just gone through it. So you're going to be sitting exams at the minute, isn't that right, Georgia?
Yeah, I have my first exam this day week.
Excellent. So
This is my idea
this
of a
is a
break.
break from revision. That's good. I'm glad you see this as a break. Results day for you, Inez. How was it?
It was very nerve-wracking because we didn't have our ASs that year, so we were kind of just, it was all on the
Yeah.
day. But I would say be prepared the night before. So I think I was a bit too prepared. I had a list of all the numbers to call if I needed anything, all the UCAS like SIA things laid out. But
We've just done a podcast about clearing, which
yeah,
our listeners will be able to listen to
hmm
before they listen to this one. And that was one of the things that came out of that.
yeah,
Be prepared
hmm
on results day, because if things don't go your way, there are other opportunities
yeah,
for you, but you just got
hmm
to be ready for it. So I think that was a good thing to do.
yeah. I'm always a bit of a panicker. I actually found it the other day clearing out my bedroom. But just try and relax, do something fun the night before, and then on the day, I think just open them. I was so nervous too, but you just have to do it.
Amazing. Good advice. Speaking of advice, we're going to finish up now because I think that's been a really good insight into how you apply um, the process you go through all the way through to whenever you get your decisions. And what would kind of be your lasting advice if you were to give yourself some advice looking back on a couple of years or around 12 months for you? What would be your advice? Georgia, you can go first.
I would advise myself to apply for more courses, even if it's not exactly what I want to do. If I were to do it all over again, I would maybe apply for social work courses as well. Although it's not what I want to do in the future, it probably would have been nice to have more to fall back on should results day not go how I want it to.
So, great advice. You've 5 choices on UCAS. If you're interested in a few things, why not use all 5 choices? You might as well. What I would say to you is if your journey takes you towards social work, you can do a social work degree after you've done your psychology degree. So if that path opens up for you, you can still do it. Don't worry, Georgia, you can. What about yourself, Inez? Any advice?
I would just say be patient and enjoy it. It's such an exciting time in your life. There's so many different roads you can go down, so many different things you can do.
Scary too, though.
Scary too,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. But just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Soak it in and have a good time.
Amazing. Girls, thank you so much for joining us. That has been really insightful, really helpful. If anybody listening here does have any questions about the whole application process, our team, student recruitment team, are more than willing to help and assist you through that. So you can get in contact with us through studentrecruitment@qub.ac.uk. Girls, thank you again. Georgia, an absolute inspiration. Well done. Keep doing
Thank
what you're
you.
doing. You're an amazing role model. Georgia is currently in school and she's come to Queens. Not currently, not right now, but has come to Queens today to help us out with this. So we really really appreciate it. And Inez, your insight into the whole process has been so valuable as well, and keep smashing it. And as a medical student, folks, thank you very much for listening, and hopefully see you all on the next episode of the Life at the Lanyon podcast.